Hi everybody, this is Eugene O'Loughlin and welcome to my series of short how-to videos. In this video we're going to learn how to recognize missing data in a dataset in R. So there's no doubt that particularly with very large data sets that when we read them into R we come across the concept of missing values. So there could be error with data gathering, there could be information not available. We'll often find missing values in data sets and columns and lines in our data set. And we need to be able to deal with these in R. So let's first of all take a look at the data set that I'm going to use in this video. So this is a fictitious data that I've made up containing 5 variables. So we've got a date variable, we've got state names, we've got codes for those states, the 2-letter codes, we've got sales figures in column 4, and finally we have revenue for those sales. And so I've made all of these data up and I've deliberately left out 2 values. I've left out a code value here on line 5, so the CO for Colorado is missing, and I've also left out a revenue figure on line 6 for the Colorado state. So there's no number there in the 5th column, and there's no code in the 3rd column. So as we will see, R is going to deal with both of these variables. So the code variable, which is a character or text variable, that's going to be treated differently than the revenue variable, which is of course a numeric variable. So let's go back into R and read this file in. Now the file is called 72_data_file.csv. This file and all other files and R scripts used in this series of videos are available on my GitHub. You'll find a link to that in the information section beneath this video on the YouTube page. So let me go ahead and click on line 4 and run that to read the data in, so we can see our sales data. It's been read into a data frame called sales data. And we've got 10 observations, 10 lines with 5 variables as we have just seen, and I display it out in the R console, and we can see that the data, our 10 rows of data are printed out, and we can look down the 3rd column of code and we can see that it's a blank, so there's nothing listed in there. But when we look at the revenue column, we can see that the letters NA are inserted. So if I bring back up the data, we can see that in the numeric variable, when R recognizes revenue as a numeric variable, so it recognizes that there's a missing value there and inserts the letters NA for not applicable. Now, as you can see, it has dealt with the character variable a little bit differently. It has not inserted the letters NA because NA, our character in a text variable like this, so they could actually mean something, so it does not insert NA into this. So we can see here that both variables are being treated differently by R. Now in this video we need to be able to figure out ways of finding variables and rows of data with NAs in them. First of all, let's see what the effect of an NA will be in a column. So if I do something like, I want to calculate the mean of the sales figures. So we can see in the sales figures all values are present. So if I do a simple mean of that data, sales, and run this line of code, we get an answer of 4967.3 in the console. But if I try and calculate the mean of the revenue variable, where there is an NA, so let me try and run that, we can see that we're not getting the mean value of the revenue, of the 9 values that are there. We're getting NA return. So NA values do not allow calculation. So in numeric variables, if there's missing data, we will have the letters NA inserted, and we need to be able to deal with that because we're not going to be able to do any data analysis. As you can see here, something as simple as calculating the mean of that column will not work. So back up to my script area, I can identify values by line as I can do with any data set. So if I do out sales data, square brackets, line 4 has a missing value on it, so that's the Colorado value. So I can run that and display that value, and you can see that there's a code missing. I can also, I know line 5 is the line with the revenue figure missing. So if I do sales data, open and close square brackets, line 5, comma, and then leave the column blank, run that piece of code, we can see we're getting the line with the NA on it. So we're able to identify the 2 lines by number, but of course this is not very practical in a data set where you have thousands, millions of records possibly and hundreds of columns. So it's not going to be terribly useful, but at least it's the simplest way of identifying those lines. Now, next though, we want to be able to, in this video we're not going to do anything with the code, but we do need to be able to figure out where there are NA values. So we need to be able to identify and recognize the NAs in our data set, because later on we might want to remove those or replace the NA values with the mean or the median, whichever we want to choose. So we're going to use a function called is.na, open and close brackets, and this is a function that asks the question of each variable, are there any NA values in this variable? So we can see in our data sets we've only just got one, so I'm going to look and say, for example, if I ask the question, are there any NA values in the sales data, in the sales data state variable, let me run that. We in our output here will get 10 falses. We have 10 rows of data, so we're getting 10 falses here. That's because there are no NA values in the 10 lines in the state variable. If I try it on the code one, we can see we are missing a value here. But so if I try this on the code one, is.na sales data $code. Okay, so is there an NA value in that column? We will see that we are getting false again for all 10 rows, despite the fact that there is a missing value in the code variable. Doesn't have an NA inserted, so therefore the is.na function will not pick up that missing value. Let me try it on the revenue column where there is in fact an NA value. So is.na sales data $, and pick up the last and final variable in here. It's our numeric variable revenue. And when we go through this, we can see we've got a true value on the 5th line. So in this way here, we can check all values, all records in a data set to see are there any NA values. So we know when I go back up to the data, is there an NA value in the revenue figure? And we can see there on line 5 there's an NA, and so we now have a method of using the is.na function of picking that out. I can check all 5 columns by number using the is.na function, sales data, and using square brackets and not indicating the variables by name here. I'm going to indicate them by number. So there are 5 columns. So if I do 1 to 5, run that piece of code, we will see a little bit easier to read for a small data set. We've got falses everywhere, so there are no NA values in date, state, code, or sales, but we can see that on line 5 there is an NA value in the revenue variable. Just be careful with this one. If I change this from 5 to 6, and asking the question, are there any NA values in 6 columns, you can see that it doesn't match up and you're going to get an error message. So let me return that to 5 and run it again, and we get our true value showing up in the place where there is an NA value. Finally, I can do all 10 lines in this code by using another function called complete cases. So complete.cases, open and close brackets. And if I just check the whole data frame here, sales data, if I check that for complete cases, so run this and we can see what happens. We can see that they're true for the first line, the second line, the third line, the fourth line. The 5th line is not complete because we have a missing value in it. There we can see it above in the console. There's an NA value on line 5. And line 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, they are complete, so they're returning true values here. 2 things to note about this. One is it's the opposite way around, so be careful when you are checking using an is.na will give you false values when there isn't an NA, and the complete.cases function will give you true values, so just don't get those 2 things mixed up. And the second thing about this is, of course, while it picked up the NA value on line 5, it didn't pick up, there's no NA value on line 4 where there is a missing value for state code. Again, complete.cases does not pick up missing values in character or text data types. So this way now you can check any type of data set. So I recommend you try some larger data sets. Even if you have a large data set that doesn't have any missing values and you want to figure out how to deal with them, save a copy of that data set and take out a couple of missing values and see can you find those using your OR code. So that's how you recognize missing data in a data set in OR. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for your attention.